Alright guys, I'm back with another chapter in 2nd Kings. We're in 2nd Kings chapter 13, where the header reads, Jehoaz rules in Israel. And we'll get right into it. Again, going to struggle with some of these names. Each generation continues on altering the name just a little bit, which makes it just a little bit more difficult for me to pronounce. But I'm going to do my best. So here we go. Jehoaz, son of Jehu, began to rule over Israel in the 23rd year of King Joash's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 17 years, but he, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He followed the example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, continuing the sins that Jeroboam had led Israel to commit. So the Lord was very angry with Israel, and he allowed King Hazael of Aram and his son Ben-Hadad to defeat them repeatedly. Then Jehoaz prayed for the Lord's help, and the Lord heard his prayer, for he could see how severely the king of Aram was oppressing Israel. So the Lord provided someone to rescue the Israelites from the tyranny of the Arameans. Then Israel lived in safety again, as they had in former days. But they continued to sin, following the evil example of Jeroboam. They also allowed the Asherah pole in Samaria to remain standing. Finally, Jehoaz's army was reduced to 50 charioteers, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had killed the others, trampling them like dust under his feet. The rest of the events in Jehoaz's reign, everything he did, and the extent of his power are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Jehoaz died, he was buried in Samaria. Then his son Jehoash became the next king. Jehoash, son of Jehoaz, began to rule over Israel in the 37th year of King Joash's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 16 years, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to turn from the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel to commit. The rest of the events in Jehoash's reign and everything he did, including the extent of his power and his war with King Amaziah of Judah, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Jehoash died, he was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Then his son Jeroboam II became the next king. When Elisha was in his last illness, King Jehoash of Israel visited him and wept over him. My father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel, he cried. Elisha told him, Get a bow and some arrows. And the king did as he was told. Elisha told him, Put your hand on the bow. And Elisha laid his own hands on the king's hands. Then he commanded, Open that eastern window. And he opened it. Then he said, Shoot. So he shot an arrow, Elisha proclaimed. This is the Lord's arrow, an arrow of victory over Aram, for you will completely conquer the Arameans at Aphek. Then he said, Now pick up the other arrows and strike them against the ground. So the king picked them up and struck the ground 3 times. But the man of God was angry with him. You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, he exclaimed. Then you would have beaten Aram until it was entirely destroyed. Now you will be victorious only 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. Groups of Moabite raiders used to invade the land each spring. Once, when some Israelites were burying a man, they replied a band of these raiders. So they hastily threw the corpse into the tomb of Elisha and fled. But as soon as the body touched Elisha's bones, the dead man revived and jumped to his feet. King Hazael of Aram had oppressed Israel during the entire reign of King Jehoaz. But the Lord was gracious and merciful to the people of Israel, and they were not totally destroyed. He pitied them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to this day he still has not completely destroyed them or banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became the next king. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoaz, recaptured from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns that had been taken from Jehoash's father. Jehoash defeated Sorry, that was really rough for all three of those in a row. So, taken from Jehoash's father, Jehoaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad on 3 occasions, and he recovered the Israelite towns. Goodness, that threw me a loop there for a second right there at the end of that passage. So reflecting on this passage, I want to talk about a couple things. One, how important it is as the leader of a nation, a leader of a household, leader of anybody, to break these generational curses. I know a lot of times when we see those things or hear those things, we immediately think immediate family. But we see that it can extend beyond that. I know sometimes I don't get political or anything like that, but when we talk about presidencies and certain political parties and draining the swamp or all these things, it's not even one specific person. It's continued behavior. We expecting different outcomes. That's the definition of insanity. Continuing the same things and expecting different outcomes. No, we just have a different person driving the car. They still have the same destination, and it's all based on selfishness. It's all based on frustration, doing the things that are evil. And so, as someone in charge of a household, in charge of other people, I've had opportunities in the military, in education now, to lead and love people. If you continue down the road that they have previously set out for, unless that's an established, expected destination, then you're going to have problems. You're there to solve and get better. If you're not participating and submitting yourself to really the love and support of the people that are put under your guard and your leadership, you're going to have problems. And you won't even be void of them, even if you do everything perfect. Because you're in the business of people when you lead and you love and you support. But still, the expectation is that you do your best, which is an interesting point when, what is it, Jehoaz? Oh, no, Elisha. When Elisha tells the king to grab the arrows that he had and hit the ground. It's interesting. He didn't tell him how many times to hit the ground. It's interesting that when he did stop at 3, that Elisha got upset. Say, hit the ground with these arrows, with whatever's left. Now, that's a twofold frustration that I have. One, the frustration was with Elisha to not communicate the expectation. But to some extent, he did. It was the king's fault that he just didn't continue. Did he tell him to stop? And so, like, my simple soldier mind is like, oh, no. Hey, and hit these on the ground. Can keep hitting them on the ground. Okay. Why would you ever stop? You literally have humbled yourself to go talk to a man that you know speaks on behalf of God, is a prophet, who, whether it's directly or indirectly, communicates through him and to him, and he says, hit those arrows on the ground. I don't know if I'd ever stop. I'm very much just wired to jump. How high? All right, keep jumping. Okay. So part of me understands the frustration, but then part of me doesn't. And a lot of the part of me that doesn't is the selfish part of me, the part of me that's the flesh. That's not what you said. You said just hit. If I just hit it once, I hit the arrows on the ground. But if you just 100% black and white, hit these arrows on the ground, why would you ever stop? I didn't tell you to stop. And he even lets him know further. Had you continued, you would have beaten back your enemy to where they would be all destroyed. But because of your whether it was lack of consistency, whether it was lack of follow through, whether lack of discipline, lack of hearing and simple understanding, comprehension, he fell short of another certain victory. And so it's very interesting when the devil's in the details. And sometimes it's not even that, because we obviously that God is in the details. He knows them all. And it's so important. We have such a lack of knowledge of the details. Then even when we think we act with the most knowledge and we think we're going to be absolute, we can still falter. Without him at the center of it all, it doesn't matter what we know. Relatively, we know nothing unless he is at the center of it. He needs to permeate everything that we do. And so, with the continued falling of each generation, again and again and again, we're still going to continue on. We're going to find ourselves in chapter 14 of 2 Kings, where the header reads, Amaziah rules in Judah. We're going to continue to go through it. I don't know how many chapters are left in 2 Kings. Probably quite a few, I imagine. At least 5 or 6. So we're going to keep going and continue these, again, these reoccurrences of all these tragedies, because these men, these great men, leaders, kings, and just rulers of the world aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not following God. And they know people that have such a relationship that they submit to that, but they're just submitting to the power. They're not submitting to the one with the power. And that's very weird. It's such a nuanced understanding of that. But if you only respond to him because he's powerful, you miss out on the relationship aspect, and then you end up making foolish things out of ignorance, out of all these other things, because you're trying to avoid an outcome rather than simply submit to it. That's super difficult. But as you can see, the greatest men of their time continually fall in the same traps, and they set them for themselves. And so, on that note, have a good night. God bless. I love you. Jesus loves you. And like I said, I'll be back for chapter 14 of 2 Kings tomorrow. Have a good night. God bless, guys.